After the events of the last week, the next two were relatively quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary happened and day-to-day activities continued as usual. It was really peaceful and Ash had nothing to stop him for doing what he was used to do. This mean waking, eating, training, washing and sleeping. His schedule was nothing else than that for the last 2 weeks. But today was more special than the others because the painter had finished his portrait and he was finally ready to show it to the queen in the court. Ash would have preferred a more private setting but the queen would have none of it. So, here he was with his 2 bodyguards in the throne room. He was at the left of the queen while the artist was in front of them. A big canvas was draped by a sheet before them. The artist bowed before the queen and start talking. Your Majesty, I have finally finished the portrait of your noble guardian. It was long and hard but I hope that you will find it to your satisfaction. Ash sighed a little by listening to the artist. Why artists always have to be such drama queens? Honestly, he just painted his portrait not realizing a masterpiece. Ash doesn't consider himself to be so important so a portrait of him would be nothing worthy of praise. He returned to the present when the queen spoke. Good. I can't wait to see the work you put in that portrait. It will be hung beside the one of Sir Aaron so I can hope that it will be up to par. I can assure your Majesty that she will be very glad to see this masterpiece. I worked very hard on it. On this note, the artist retired the sheet. On the canvas, Ash could see himself standing with a dignified look. His Pikachu was on his right shoulder and had a look of power with it. His Aura Guardian outfit suited him quite nicely. All in all, it was a good portrait even if Ash was more modest than what the portrait entailed. It will be good enough beside the one of his mentor. He looked to the queen when she asked him what he thought about the portrait. Well, it's a good one. But I look a bit arrogant on it. What do you think, Pikachu? The little mouse go closer to the portrait and take a good look of it. When he see how the artist represent him, he puff his chest proudly and the sign he make were really satisfied ones. Ash sighed. Of course his mouse friend would be proud of it since it shows him proud and powerful. You know Pikachu, sometime I found you too proud for your own good. Ash then turned to the queen. Well, since Pikachu seemed to like it, it would do. Some of the court laughed a little and the servants of the castle carefully hung the portrait near the one of Sir Aaron. After that, the artist made a little noise to draw the attention to himself again. If it please your Majesty, during that week, I have made another portrait with the drafts that I found of Sir Aaron and Lucario. Would you and your court want to see it? The queen looked interested by this. She didn't know that the painter had kept the drafts of Sir Aaron with him. His portrait was made so long ago that she thought that the drafts would have been lost. She nodded and the artist made a sign at the door. The door opened and 2 servants brought a very large canvas also covered by a sheet to protect it. The canvas was put up and the court waited to see it. The artist slowly take the sheet out and Ash tensed a little. The portrait was that of the queen on her throne surrounded by Sir Aaron on her right and Ash on her left. Lucario was beside Sir Aaron and Pikachu was on Ash's right shoulder. It was a real masterpiece. The court gasped when they see it and the queen, first surprised seemed clearly pleased by it. It is truly a masterpiece, Master John. I'm very happy with it and we will try to find a really good place for it. Maybe somewhere in the throne room. What do you think of this portrait, Sir Ashton? It's a really good one. We never had one of my mentor and me on it. And let's not forget Lucario and Pikachu. Ash's gaze was constantly on his mentor's face. He then felt his hand being taken. He looked down to see the queen's hand on his. She could clearly understand the shock the young boy was feeling. He still miss his mentor dearly and seeing him like that, like the portrait of his family. Too bad the painter didn't know his mother's face. The queen then rose from her throne and ordered that this painting was to be hung in the throne room at a place of honor. To honor the kingdom's guardians and their sacrifice for the kingdom of Rhoda. Ash blushed a little on that sentence. He didn't do anything that could be honored. He wasn't even a real guardian yet. While the servants work on finding a good place for the painting, the people started walking to observe the other paintings. Ash could clearly see an assembly of young noblewomen in front of his portrait. Great. Other girls that will chase him now. He look around and stop when he see the look of hostility sent his way by Lord Barrion. What did that guy have against him? That was becoming ridiculous. Was he jealous? Ash didn't have power or money. Sure, he does control the power of aura, but that was all. He didn't have any land or money or any other political power. One day, he would have to have a very long talk about that attitude with the Lord. Did Lord Barrion was jealous over his control of the power of aura? If that was the case, that would have explained the hostility the man had not only with him but with his mentor as well. He was there in his reflections when a voice bring him back to the present. It was Lady May who was right in front of him. Ashy. I was talking to you. Ho. My apologies, my lady. My mind was elsewhere, it seems. Good. Now that you have returned from your little trip somewhere, let's be together for some time. After all, I must return to my family estate tomorrow. Ash nodded, but he couldn't stop thinking that she only wanted to say to the other girls to back off him because he was hers. Well, nothing he could say would change her mind anyway. While they were walking, he could see the other jealous stares from the other noblewomen. It seemed that he was right about his assumptions that Lady May wanted to make the other girls jealous of her. He left her gloating and looked at his mentor's face with a longing gaze. What he didn't see was the understanding look the lady sent his way. It wasn't fair that she had so many family members that she didn't know what to do with it and that her crush has so little family left. She then talked to him. You miss him, don't you? She asked Ash while he was looking at his mentor's portrait. Every day. I lost my mother when I was 6 and I never knew who was my real father. My mother told me once that he was a brave soldier, but that's all I know about him. I don't even know if he is still alive somewhere. When I lost my mother, I thought that I was all alone. For a time, I was. Then I met Pikachu. A year after my mother's death. 1 year later, I met Sir Aaron and Lucario. That's where my life started changing for the better. I will never forget that day. Yes, I can see that. But in your situation, I would surely not forget it either. So I understand why he was so important for you. Yes, Sir Aaron was the father I never knew and that I always wanted. He took that place rather easily, don't you think, my lady? Probably, but I don't remember him very well. I have never met him officially, but he looked like a good man. So I'm not surprised really. He must have taken a really good care of you. Yes, he did. She was about to say something else when she see her father approaching them. She release her crush's arm and go to him. She then tell Ash good day and followed her father and her uncle. They were so annoying. Ash was finally talking to her and giving her attention. And still, they interrupt their conversation. The rest of the evening was calm and Ash returned to his lodging sooner than usual. His emotions were still in turmoil with what he saw in the morning. He was a little distracted all day. The queen understood his plight and leave him alone for the most part. He had never expected to feel that strongly when he had seen the second painting. He supposed that he should have expected it. After all, even after all this time, he was still mourning his mentor. His memories bring him back in the time he asked his mother about his dad. Who was he and where was he? He still remember her sad smile. She told him that he was a good man and a brave soldier. But a soldier of what army? He supposed the army of Kanto, but he wasn't sure. And since he doesn't know his name, searching will be a moot point. And, it has been a long time that he left Kanto, so his unknown father could be dead for all he know. His mother always told him that his father loved them very much, but he was forced to leave and he never returned. As far as he know, there was no war in Kanto since a very long time ago. Way before his birth in fact, so what could have forced his father to leave? He returned to the present time and rise from his chair before going to his window. The sun was setting and the night was fast approaching. Ash concentrated a little and shivered. Something dark and terrible was coming. And he wasn't able to see what was coming. After a time, he decided to go to bed. It was really late and he didn't want to be half asleep for his training the next day. So he prepared to go to bed, locked his door and his window and slipped under his blanket. It wasn't long before sleep claimed him. For a time, he slept like normal, but in the end of the night, an awful dream started. The first thing he heard was the noise of something burning and the smell of burned wood. He looked around him and everything he was seeing was on fire. He found himself in a street and everything was burning. The houses, the trees, the road, everything. The next thing he heard was shouts. Terrified shouts from men, women and children. He tried to see where these shouts were coming from, but it seemed to come from all around him. He tried to use his power, but he felt like when he started and his control was weak and pathetic. He then ran to see, but suddenly, he was floating over a huge burning field. A field with a big army on it, and all he could see was his friends, dead. There were bodies everywhere and no way he could help. He felt stuck and unable to see other things but the horrors around him. No, it couldn't be, he was dreaming, his friends were all right. They were alive, not dead. He shivered violently while trying to wake, and the last thing he saw before he did was the shadow of the Pokemon Giratina, the lord of the underworld. He shouted and, suddenly, a bright light come to him. His eyes opened and he rises on his bed with a mute cry on his lips. He looked around while his heart was doing a good imitation of a drum. He was in his room in Cameron, on his bed. It was a nightmare, just a nightmare. It was a nightmare, just a nightmare. Nothing was real. Calm down, Ash. Everything is fine, he told himself. After a time, his breath calmed down and his heart did the same. He rise from his bed and look outside. The sky was turning a lighter shade of blue, indicating that the sun wasn't far away. Pikachu was still snoring on his bed, unaffected by the nightmare that just plagued his trainer and friend. Ash wasn't feeling good enough to try to sleep again. He sit on his comfortable chair in front of the fireplace and look at the fire that kept his room warm during the night. This nightmare was truly horrible and he felt so useless. He shivered again about it. What was that? What caused this nightmare? As far as he knows, there wasn't any sighting of a Darkrai in the vicinity. So, what was it? He hugged himself, trying to bring a little comfort on his freezing body. He felt cold not because of the room but because of the nightmare that literally freeze his inside. After a time, he fell asleep in the chair. And, this time, no nightmare came to plague his sleep. He never see the pink feline Pokemon that was floating before his window. That Pokemon was looking at the boy with compassion. I am sorry, my chosen. I won't be able to protect your friends for the time to come. I will just do all I can to protect you. The little pink Pokemon then turned invisible and flew in the direction of the tree of beginning. But just before she turned her gaze at the boy sleeping on his chair and used her telekinetic powers to put a blanket on him so he wouldn't be cold. She then flew away. Later, Ash opened his eyes and blinked a few times before his vision became clear. There was a little weight on his knees and he looked and see Pikachu. After a time, he realized that he was not in his bed but sitting on his chair. A blanket was draped on him and he couldn't remember who put it there. He then looked at his friend who was a little concerned about him. Ash then smiled to Pikachu and began petting him on the head. I'm all right, Pikachu. I just had an awful nightmare last night. It's gone now, no need to worry, said Ash. Pikachu nodded and made cooing sound. He really loved when Ash was petting him that way. After a time, the boy rise from his chair and stretch. His neck give him a little pain and he promised himself to never sleep on his chair again. He then wash his face and dress himself. He had just finished when his breakfast came. The young Aura Guardian then eat and leaves his room. He was training with the knights this morning. Sir Lance and Sir Keith would be there, but not only them. There will be the other knights too. While he was going to the training field, he couldn't stop thinking about his nightmare. Was it a premonition or simply his mind trying to cope with everything that was happening? If a danger was really coming their way, he better be ready to fight it. With a new resolve, he accelerated his walk. Pikachu jumped on his shoulder to be with him. It wasn't long before they arrive on the training field. Some of the knights were already there. Ash greet them and start his morning stretch to help his muscles. After that he go take a training sword. Ash always loved to train with the kingdom's knights. For the majority of them, he was like a little brother and they were really helpful when his mentor died. In fact, there was only one condition for him to follow while training with them. He must not use his aura. Since he is the only one to have that capacity in the group, it will not be really fair for them if he use his powers to predict where they will hit. Ash agreed with this rule even if he found it hard to obey it sometime. Being the shortest of them wasn't easy either. All the others towered over him, and it was hard to admit that even all the squires who were his age were taller than him. Some even younger than him. Ash remembered a time when he spoke about that to his mentor while he was frustrated about that. It wasn't fair that he was the shortest. Even then, at 15, he was still half a head shorter than the other 15-years-old squires. Worried about his short height, Sir Aaron had brought him to a healer to try and find a reason for this. The healer was very considerate while he explained that the boy's upbringing has stunted his growth, but that with time and patience, his body will grow strong. He just need time. He returned to the present time when Sir Robert, the head of the knights, came to the field. He then starts speaking to everyone here. Ash always respect the man. He was loyal and strong in his convictions and friendship. The man was also very big in Ash's point of view, with a large chest and broad shoulders. 2 strong legs and arms. His face was tanned with brown hair and eyes. Ash also appreciated that the man always pushed him to his limits. When he was younger, Ash thought that the man hated him with the way he was treated, but Sir Robert spoke to him and say that he push Ash like this because he know that he could take it. Ash always remembered what he told him that fateful day. You're stronger than you think, lad. Give yourself some credit. He then leaves the young boy to his reflections. And he was right. Ash became stronger because of that, and he never gives up. Like this morning training. He gives all he has to improve. He was always told to look to his strengths. Where was he strong? Well, he was pretty fast. And while he couldn't match an opponent in brute strength, he could always match him in speed. So, being very agile was an advantage. And, he is fast even without using his aura. He was also very precise in his attacks, so that was another advantage to work with. All in all, he can fight with or without aura. And, that could be very useful. Later, after the training, Sir Robert take him apart and expressed that he was very impressed by his progress. He works hard on his training and it shows. The knight also said that his muscles will soon follow with this kind of training. Already, he could see the difference. When Ash started his training, he was a puny size compared to the others. Now, he was developing into a fine young man. Yes, he was not as tall as the others, but that must not stop him from doing his best. He may hit another growth spurt, who knows. Ash thanked the man before returning to his quarter for a much-needed bath and meal. While he was soaking in a warm bath, Ash couldn't help to think about how his life became much easier when his mentor found him. Without Sir Aaron, he would have lose Pikachu to that bully and probably stay in jail for his thievery. All in all, his life was good even with the training. He just hopes that it doesn't change anytime soon. The next week has passed and he does the same routine. It was now the night of the dark moon and it was a few minutes before midnight. Ash was returning to his quarter after a boring reception to welcome a new ambassador to the court. This kind of thing always bored him almost out of his mind. He almost fall asleep during the man's speech. Did every ambassadors have to be so boring? He stopped near a window and looked outside. The night wind was so peaceful that Ash was somewhat captivated. He returned to his time when he heard the clock tower stroke midnight. Already, Pikachu was sleeping on his shoulder and Ash thought that he should follow the example of his furry friend and go to bed too. He started walking toward his quarter when something stopped him. What was that? He looked around but he was alone. He started walking again when a very sudden pain struck him. He gasped and hold on the wall to stand. Something wasn't right. His movement waked Pikachu, who jumped on the floor. He then see what is happening when he see Ash's face. His friends seemed to suffer from some kind of attack, but they were alone and he knows that a psychic would have needed eye contact to attack them. There were no Pokemon around. Pikachu returned to his trainer when he heard him gasp and fall in a dead faint. Pika Pi. His call of distress brought a patrol of the castle's guards to them. They were near and when they heard Pikachu's distress call, they start running in his direction. They arrived to find Sir Ashton on the floor and his Pikachu, who was trying to awake him. The boy seemed to be in intense pain. The leader of the patrol rapidly approached the boy. He put a hand to the boy's forehead. He's burning up. He then turned to the rest of the patrol and point to one of them. You, go fetch a healer. To another one. You, go warn the queen. Then, to the last two. You two, help me bring him back to his quarters. The rest of the men immediately followed their orders. Ash was brought very fast to his quarter. Pikachu followed, very afraid that his friend was attacked and that he couldn't help him. Ash was put in his bed and it wasn't very long before the queen arrived, closely followed by the healer. The healer was a young woman who followed not only the healing with plants but also the healing of the spirit by the ancient arts. Anywhere else, she would have been branded a witch and burned at the stakes, but not in Cameron. Here she was welcome to practice her art. As long as she doesn't hurt anyone. She quickly approached her young patient and throw everyone out during her exam. In the corridor, the queen was waiting with her guards and Pikachu, who was feeling very down. What happened to his friend? He was about to force his entry in the room when the healer exited it. She quickly saw what Pikachu was intent to do and let him go to his trainer. She then approached the queen and her entourage. I have good and bad news, Your Majesty, said the healer. She then continued. Physically, your guardian is very fit. There is no trace of poison or any other infection in him. Mentally, that is another story. What do you mean? A psychic attack? The queen asked. No, not an attack. Your guardian wasn't attacked by anything. Was it human or Pokemon? No. The problem is that all his chakras are desaligned. It seems that his aura want to tell him something. Did he suffers from nightmares or visions in the last month? The queen remembered then the encounter of the last 2 weeks. The bad feeling that Ash had and the frequent nightmares. They all thought that it was just the loss of his mentor that produced this kind of result, but now she wasn't so sure anymore. She then spoke to the healer about Ash's feeling of impending doom and his nightmares. The young woman then nodded. I understand, Your Majesty. In my opinion, I'm afraid that something tragic is happening tonight, and Sir Ashton seemed to feel it too. What it is, I don't know, but it seemed to be something very dark. For the moment, I could just wait and see. His fever is under control now. It should break in the morning. Someone should stay with him at all time. I will assign 2 nights to him. He will not wake in an empty room. And, I suspect that anyone who tried to take Pikachu away will be hit by an electric attack. So, he will stay too. The healer nodded and bowed before leaving. As she said, the fever broke in the morning, but Ash didn't wake. The healer said that it was expected. The fever had sapped all his energy and he will need to sleep to recover. She told them to let him wake on his own. 2 days later, she was called again, but this time, it was because the guards have recovered a severely wounded messenger. The man arrived in front of the castle's entry. He was bloody and almost unconscious. The guards brought him inside a room and called the healer back. The man wore the color of the Aura Council. He was not an Aura user, he was just working for them as a messenger. His Ponyta was brought to the stables and the stables boys took very good care of him. The poor Pokemon wasn't as hurt as his master, but he was exhausted. It took another 2 days for the messenger to recover enough to speak coherently. By this time, Ash was very close to wake if his movements was a good indicator. In the council room. The queen was sitting on her throne in the council room when 2 guards entered with the messenger. The poor man was unable to walk, but he insisted that he speak to the queen urgently. So the guards brought him in the council room and sit him in a chair near the queen. Her council was there too and they all await the news. We are all here except for Sir Ashton. So what was the news you brought with you, messenger? Asked Lady Rin. Sir Ashton. Is he well? He is still alive. The messenger asked very fast. Yes, he is. He is not feeling well at the moment, but he still live. Why this question? Answer the queen. I am sorry, Your Majesty, but I bring tragic news. 4 days ago, at midnight, the Aura Hunters have striken at the Aura Council. They killed everyone. All the guardians are dead. Even the initiates. The youngest was only 6 years old. I was badly hurt in the attack and left for dead. While I was on the floor, I heard some of them saying that their operations in the other regions should be progressing quite nicely. They were gloating that they will be getting rid of the guardians forever. As soon as I was able, I reached the stable and take my Ponyta. We rid until we reach Cameron. I'm sorry, but I think that Sir Ashton is the last guardian now. Everyone in the room was horrified by this story. The queen most of all. How will she tell the news to Ash? She was devastated by this news and she wasn't even a guardian. She doesn't need psychic powers to know that Ash will be more than devastated. The messenger was waiting for an answer. He already knew that his news was one of the baddest he had to take. He was sad too because many of the Guardians were his friends. He was just glad that he was able to reach Sir Ashton before the Aura Hunters. At this moment, a knock was heard in the silent room and a guard entered. He bowed to the Queen before talking. My lady, Sir Ashton has awakened.